All right, welcome to another episode of the WP Crowd. Sorry we were off last week, but most of us were at WordCamp San Diego, and while I really tried to get a I tried to get a podcast recorded. That was much more yeah, that wasn't going to happen. There was no way it was going to happen. I just thought it might. Um, so this week we're talking about selling and hiring developers. It's kind of tangential to our leveling up as a WordPress developer um, podcast series we have going right now. But this is going to be more specifically on both how to sell your services and how to hire someone who has development services. So before we start, I'm going to do the intros. I'm going to start with my left with Carl.
I'm Carl. I'm a WordPress developer slash PHP developer. Um, I do a lot of writing on my blog, carlalexander.ca. That's it.
If anyone is listening or watching and you are interested in server stacks and stuff like that, Carl gave an excellent talk at WordCamp San Diego about servers and the stack, as well as wrote a humongous article about the whole thing. So check out his website, carlalexander.ca. It's one of his latest posts. Jesse.
I'm Jesse Peterson. I'm a Genesis developer in Florida, and I've got themes going and plugins going and a video series about halfway done. So I don't like sitting still.
Nice. And then finally, Shelley.
I'm Shelley Peacock. I'm right outside of Nashville, Tennessee, and I'm a WordPress designer and consultant. And so I'm the other spectrum of all these brilliant guys.
Awesome. So so we're gonna start today with so we're kind of splitting it up into two parts. One is going to be hiring. One is going to be selling. I'm going to start with selling. So Carl, Jesse, and I are all developers who, at some point or another, have sold our services, as well as just being developers. So one of the big things that we get is, how to sell our services and how to really sell it to a specific audience who needs it. So I'm going to start off. First of all, Jesse, it looks like you kind of dropped there. Are you back with us?
Something happened. It went away for 5 seconds, and I missed your question.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying if you're back. I haven't actually asked a question yet.
Okay.
So I'm going to start with a question though, and I'm going to toss it straight to Jesse. One of the big criticisms a lot of people get with developers is, you can become very snarky, and a lot of developers, even as a developer myself, when I talk to other developers, if they know that they are on a, let's say, a higher level or higher realm as me as a developer, or they feel like they are, they get very snarky and a little egotistical. So how do you find yourself combating that? Or you could just say don't do that, but it's just, sometimes it's just in our nature, because we come across that way because, let's say, just we know a little bit more, right? The knowledge there just inadvertently turns into, oh, you're such a know-it-all. So how do you combat that, and how do you kind of, what is your approach for selling services to people? Services.
Yeah, I've somewhat avoided the whole feeling talked down to by picking who I relate with pretty well. My circle of friends are pretty supportive, and I also suffer a little bit from imposter syndrome, so I always thought that I see these people who are on a higher level than me. Turns out they thought that I was on a higher level than them, and then comes out that I know this and you know that. And so it really doesn't matter where you are. If you can use someone else's services, that's great. If they can use yours, that's great for you. I don't really think that there's really any need to have a pecking order, except to the extent of who do I need to talk to get this level of project done. And so I've got something right now where it is above my level, and so I started going out on a hunt for some object-oriented PHP developers who knew enough JavaScript to get the job done. And I have no problem saying I don't know how to do this because I'll learn something along the way. And in that process, they didn't talk down to me. So that's really good. As far as selling yourself, it's good to just be consistent on Twitter or social media, helping people, and not being snarky about someone's abilities, or if they say, hey, look at what I've done, to pick on it. But if you can improve it and do it in a constructive way, maybe not even talk back on Twitter, but put it in their GitHub as a comment or a pull request, that person's going to remember that and appreciate it. So treat people the way you want to be treated, really.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to that. I have the opposite problem. I have an entire meme about how nobody understands me after I say hi. So, so it's completely different, and I feel like it's a similar kind of situation in the sense that you really, if nobody understands you, well, you could be snarky about it, obviously, and be like, oh, you're an idiot, like I shouldn't be wasting my breath with you. But I think what it comes down to, and that's why I use it almost every time I do a technical talk, I use that slide, is because it forces me to be a better teacher and to empathize with the person that I'm working with or the person that I'm teaching with. And people value that a lot. Like, if you try to put yourself in their shoes, like, you can get it's a bit hard to explain, but you build very strong relationships that way. And you really don't need to be snarky about that. Like, people are already very self-conscious about their lack of technical abilities, so they really don't need to be put down. Really, they want to feel understood. So that's really something that I always keep in mind whenever I'm teaching or explaining something technical to someone. Is, are you understanding? Do you have any questions? Because I don't mind explaining it. It's a good way to make sure that you understand the concept yourself. If you can explain it to somebody who's less technically competent than you, it shows a great mastery over the material as well.
I have a question actually that we kind of talk about, but one thing that kind of comes up a lot for me is I talk to someone and you know, I can talk, I can get down and you know, get people to understand what I'm talking about, and I try my best to always do that, especially when it comes to WordPress, because I get a lot of people who are questioning about themes and plugins and stuff like that, and they want to make some changes. How do you combat that feeling? And I'm not sure if you guys get it, but and Shelley, you can kind of pitch on this too, because I'm sure you might get this too. But when you're selling yourself, or you're just, even if you're just explaining yourself, right, and you see that there's a potential to make a sell with someone as they're asking you a question, how do you combat that inner feeling like, okay, they don't even know this, so they're probably not going to be able to afford my services? That's kind of like the big barrier I get a lot, where it's like, if you don't know what a theme is, you're probably not going to be able to afford to hire me to, you know, consult with your business. How do you guys combat that? How do you guys get past that? Or do you also just kind of leave it at that? Give them every piece of information you can, and then just kind of let them be on their way.
Actually, what I do in that case, and I've got an appointment this afternoon for that exact same scenario, is I just sell blocks at a time and spend a couple hours in a meeting figuring out exactly what they need to do based on what they have now versus my suggestion of change. And that's kind of a new realm for me, because the majority of my clients don't even know what a URL is. So, you know, this one in particular is going to be, you know, it's going to be time blocks. And, you know, you go through the first block of time. If it works, then you go through the second block of time, and so on and so forth. And if it doesn't, you know, you're out 5 hours and you made money and you go on.
Yeah, I just kind of want to, in a way, like I'm trying to select people out, like make sure that they self-select themselves out. So if they don't know what what I'm talking about, or or uh, or they can't afford me. I think that's fine, but it's also for myself, right? You also want to pick up projects that are challenging to yourself. So if somebody comes up to you and says, "Oh, I don't know what a theme is," the odds that this is going to be a project that you'll feel involved. Obviously, if you need the money, that's different. But if you have a bit of a choice on the type of projects that you can take, that's probably not a type of project that you want anything to do with. So it's really a selection mechanism in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, the question is more like once you establish that, right? Like, there's a certain point in the conversation where you're like, okay, this person is 90% chance not going to be able to afford my services, right? They're going to want me to help them for, tens of dollars, and I can't do that. How do you stop the conversation? This is for all developers who are trying to sell themselves. This is always going to happen. You're always going to run into this as you're networking. How do you stop it from going further? And I guess how do you do it without being, kind of an asshole about it, without saying, stop right there, you can't afford me, and then walk away? Because as much as we'd love to do that, that's very, very rude.
It
So,
starts with your contact form. I mean, when you're doing intake and your contact form clearly says that your minimum project price is $1,000, if you get a request for $250, they better be asking for something simple. And 9 times out of 10 right now, that's true. Now, if they corner me in person at a word camp, at a social, my drink is empty. I got to go back and refill it. You've only got $10. I mean, there's ways to get out of it. I try to head it off before the pass, though, just by being selective in who even contacts me.
that's a good kind of another good point is, I don't do this, but maybe I should. Jesse, do you do this? Or maybe Shelley, do you do this? Do you actually put any type of pricing on your website? I know it's kind of hit or miss with some people. Some people love to do it, some people don't love to do it.
I've got very broad bands. If you go to petersonmediagroup.com/contact, you'll see that I've got bands of prices for how complex of a site you want, and it clearly says if it's under this dollar amount, don't even ask me for a custom theme because I'm not giving you a theme. So, I mean, it goes up to unlimited. Someone wants to pay me $200K, I'm going to take it.
No, that's just way too much money. I can't take that. How about you, Shelley? Do you have a pricing, anything like that on your website?
I have a website questionnaire form, but it's really kind of designed after the first contact is made. And it's in increments. It's a budget question, and it's in increments. And I think the lowest increment is $2,000, and it's like $2,000 to $3,200. And I've got kind of weird numbers, but like Jesse, it's kind of broad. So it gives me an idea.
Okay.
I think it was Carrie Dills in San Diego that suggested that in her talk, to put an actual dollar amount in your contact form, so that it sets expectations whenever somebody wants to get in touch with you.
Yeah, since I did that maybe 3 or 4 years ago, I've gotten one request for a $500 make it look like Facebook request. So it really kills those ridiculous ones off.
Okay. I'm gonna switch gears here. I'm gonna flip to the other side of this equation, which is, now that we've kind of established a developer kind of selling themselves and try to talk on the same level as the person that you're kind of selling to. How do you hire a developer? Now, Shelley, you've hired a few people. I've hired a few people in the past as well. So let's just start with the basic question of what do you look for when you're trying to hire a developer? Are you looking for someone to complete the specific project requirements? Or are you looking for someone who just knows enough? Or like what is your major criteria when you're like, okay, I need to hire a developer for this project?
Well, it depends on budget. Kidding. Actually, as I've grown, I know enough now to figure out specifically what I need. And if it's going to take me 2 or 3 days where I could hire out 5 or 6 hours, and get it done ahead of time, then that's typically what I look for now. And it's very specific functionality at this point. So I look for like you said earlier, you know, if I need PHP, if I need functions, if I need something, it basically for me depends on what I'm comfortable with doing versus if I Google it, don't understand the first 2 pages of Google, yeah, I'm hiring somebody. So it just depends. But I also, one of the things that I would like to recommend to whoever's listening is get as specific as you can with your functionality and with what you need, because that's where, you know, like we said earlier about us speaking to you guys, you know, there has to be a level met of communication to start with. And, you know, you can reach out to people like me, you know, tweet me and ask me, how would you say this? This is what I need, you know, and then I can help with that, because I have learned a very hard lesson a couple of years ago with an absolute jack of a developer, and he just literally, I mean, he sat on the project. I was on a 24-hour deadline. He sat on the project for 3 days and then came back and said, you didn't explain it right, I'm out of here. And it was like, so yeah,
Sorry about
just
that, Sheldon.
Yeah, that's also a personality thing. So the weird thing about developers, and I'll be the first person to kind of admit this, is that developers kind of have a wide range of social aptitude, from the very socially aware and, you know, you can hang out with them at a party, to the ones that kind of hang out in the corner by themselves or don't even show up to the party. So working with a developer, it's definitely a different beast when you don't know who they are in person, and that can kind of translate into, you know, your working relationship with them. I'm not saying that someone who doesn't show up to the after party at WordCamp isn't a good developer by any means. Those are probably
Right.
some of the great, you know, some of the best developers also. But I'm just saying, like, your working style is also going to be very important, and getting along with your developer. Like, I've worked with people in the past where, yeah, I'll get the job done, and then as soon as I'm done with them, I never want to work with them again, just because our personalities will conflict a lot, or they just don't get, let's say, my schedule, which I will blatantly say ahead of the time, here's my schedule. You know, it's kind of hit or miss, and that's a huge part of the equation. And it's not just when you're hiring a developer or hiring a consultant. It's hiring and firing in general relies on there needs to be some type of connection there beyond just skill sets. And so, yeah, when you're hiring a developer, I'd always recommend, you know, trying to get to know the developer that you are potentially going to hire as best as you can in whatever, you know, medium that you have available.
That's why referrals are really good, and networking. I mean, that you go to the after party, the WordCamp after party or not, I feel like networking is a really good way to get a feel for other developers out there, and know which ones are good, which ones aren't good. Because word gets around. So really, if you do a good job and that person's somewhat active socially, they can promote you and or refer you and things like that. And
Yeah, I think that's one of the best ways as a developer, and to kind of get out there more. You know, a lot of developers, consulting in general, I mean, this is kind of a consulting thing, is as you're kind of progressing past the, you know, small budget clientele, and you want to push yourself up to the next level of getting bigger small businesses and, again, bigger budgets, most of that comes from just referral, word of mouth, and you networking with people, and then all of a sudden you're getting, not just giving, but you're getting bigger projects. I'd say it's a little bit easier as a developer, because if you're a developer who has no interest in the end client, right? So like while I will take on, you know, a business client, I always prefer working with someone like Shelley, or someone who already maintains that relationship, and I'm just kind of in the background making sure all the code is sweet and sexy and functional. And it's not because, again, it's not a social thing, it's just I don't really have the time to deal with a client. And it allows me to offer someone like Shelley a better rate also. because I don't have to deal with emails. I don't have to deal with phone calls and meetings. I can just deal with the work. And as a developer, I find networking is crucial, because the more you network and the more you get yourself out there, the more people like Shelley, who are actually hustling end clientele, like the actual business, the more they're going to see you and want you to get you on their team and bring you on board with all of their future projects, and then they're going to refer you to someone else, who's going to refer you to someone else. So being a developer is kind of interesting in that, selling your services as a developer is kind of interesting in that it's similar to a regular consultant who's selling business services, but you can kind of be behind the scenes and then take on a lot of different types of consultants who are dealing with the end business in the end.
And it lets you focus on what you're good at.
Yeah, exactly. I've never been a really good project manager. I don't always respond to emails as quickly as I should, and sometimes clients really don't appreciate that. So yeah, that's why I prefer just sitting in my room coding. I just sit here and I code.
However, you do take a smaller piece of the pie when you do that, so it's something to be aware of.
Yeah, I mean, if you're trying to, yeah, I mean, it's when you're a developer and you're not doing the end client thing, you're kind of a B2B business service. Depending on who you're selling your services to, yeah, you might need to take on a little more quantity to make up for it.
Yeah, I mean, if you're booked solid, and that's your ideal work, then you're in hog heaven.
Yeah. That's a term I've never heard before. Hog heaven.
Hog heaven.
They don't have bacon there, so I will never go there.
Yeah, that sounds horrible. No, and I totally agree. Like, if I was booked 40 hours a week, which, I mean, I am because I have a full-time job, but if I was a developer consultant booked up 40 hours a week at my ideal hourly rate, sure, I'd be making a bunch of money right now, and I'd be hog heaven is where I'd be.
You'd be at the pool right now.
Yeah, I'd be at the pool. I'd be hanging out. And that's fine, but yeah, I totally agree that selling to an end client is always going to be more lucrative. You're always going to get a bigger paycheck out of it, but there's also the time involved, and that's one thing that I always kind of disliked about that area was just I don't want to deal with client calls and meetings and stuff.
That is true.
Yeah, because at that point you're like the whole thing. You're the PM, you're the analyst, you're
exactly.
So if your goal is I just want to become a better coder, or I just want to code because that's what I like doing in my day, and I don't want to really deal with that, that you can see it almost as like a cost. That's the cost of doing business and doing the business that you want to do. So.
I also find that you make more money in the long run when you have a team of people that you work with on a project, because usually those are going to be the bigger projects, right? Like someone who's coming in and needs design services for their print media and their as well as their website. So they need design for both their website and print media. They need more of a business solution versus just a website. That's where the real money is sometimes, and that is never a one-person kind of a job. It's always going to be 2 or 3 people, and sometimes in those areas you also have a PM, kind of like their whole role is a PM on that job. But don't want to get too far into that. I do want to keep on going with the whole hiring stuff. So Shelley, why don't you tell us what are some of the good places you found developers besides networking? I know you do a lot of WordCamps, so. If you're at home and you need to hire a developer and everyone you already book is booked, where do you go? How do you find a developer?
Well, Facebook groups are a great place. I'm a member of several different groups, advanced WordPress, intermediate WordPress. Typically, it just like I said, it depends on what you're looking for, but one thing I found to rule people out is and this actually happened to me 3 years ago, is get on Advanced WordPress and ask a dumb question, and within 5 minutes see how many people just shred you, and those are the ones you don't want to hire. So typically, I just kind of read through, and you can just scroll through and see who's good, see who's not, see who's willing to help, and give them a little bit of what you need. And if they do that, great, and you guys get along, then presto, you've got a developer. It's a hit or miss, until you get into the networking level where you know people.
Yeah, and even if you're networking all the time, it's you never know. Like, I might be booked solid for the next few weeks, so whatever. I can't get hired, right? So I'm not gonna take on more than I can chew, although I do it a lot anyway. I find that sometimes I will reach out to other developers or a designer who I always will turn to, and it's like, nope, no time this week or next week. So you always have to have a way to bring on someone kind of ad hoc, a la carte, if you will. And yeah, no, I definitely agree. Facebook groups are a good way. That's a really good strategy, though, asking kind of a low-level question, especially with Advanced WordPress, which has like 20,000 members. And I know a lot of them will bite the heads off anyone who asks kind of a low-level question. So that's actually pretty good advice right there. There's also a whole bunch of other Facebook groups. I know Jesse has the Genesis one. I don't know if you're an admin or you're just part of it, but I know that there are Genesis ones.
Slack.
You're in the Slack. So Slack also a good place if you are Slackable. If you know what Slack is and you use it, there's also a lot of communities on Slack that you can always turn to for questions, as well as eventually hiring someone. I'm going to switch it kind of 180 again with Shelley. And so we've talked about how to sell services. We've talked about how to hire someone. Shelley, how do you fire a developer? You've hired someone. You thought they were going to be the end-all, be-all. You're like, hey, I was looking for a Carl. You're definitely not a Carl. You're more like a Roy. I can't deal with that. I need to fire you. How do you deal with that?
Oh my God, I would never fire you, Roy. That totally depends on. It depends on the project. It depends on how I've gotten along with this person. If I get along with them really well and they just didn't quite hit what I needed to hit, then I will keep them in mind. But to fire, it depends on deadline too. I mean, like that guy that if we were on deadline and that was just ridiculous. But typically, if I have to let somebody go, I change all the passwords first to everything, and then just say, shoot them an email with PayPal money in it or whatever we agreed on, and just say, thanks for your help. I think we're done here. I'm not the type to burn a bridge and say you sucked. I'm good. I think we're done here. I can take it from here, because I do know enough now that I can pretty much look at what they did and know, yeah, that wasn't what I was looking for. And it also depends, for me, and this is something I wanted to say earlier. Jesse is Genesis. I'm also complete Genesis, and looking for your developers, you need to try to stay within that realm, because within whatever realm you're in, because I'm Genesis, I'm slightly limited to the ones that I can just say, hey, I need this, and they don't. And this just recently happened to me. So, and they don't understand Genesis. They might be the most brilliant developer in the world, but if they're not used to hooks, chutes, and ladders, then it's not going to work out. So that's what I do. I try to be nice. I'm Southern girl.
Yeah, never burn bridges.
Never.
Never burn bridges. You never know where that person's gonna end up. Next thing you know, they're an engineering manager at one of the big agencies, and they'll just remember you treated them like shit. Just be nice. There's no reason to.
You're such a nice Canadian. Don't burn bridges.
Yeah. You'd forget I'm Canadian.
Yeah.
I haven't heard him say sorry yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I apologize about that.
I know, I agree. I think burning bridges is not the good way to go. I've always tried when leaving a relationship, whether it's a full-time job or I've I've quit freelance projects as well, and that's kind of a whole other conversation. We've talked about it in the past. But when quitting a relationship, I always try not to burn bridges. I always try to help, um, help them fill the gap that I might be leaving them in. Um, Even at my last job for Disney, when I moved from one spot to the other, I immediately referred in someone else, and they were hired probably within
Yeah.
a month. So
I mean, that's a general kind of, even if you leave a job, I think that's the right thing to do. Like, regardless that you're like a freelancer or not. Like, if you're moving on, I just there's like when you're in a more corporate-y environment, they'll be like document everything you've done, but really, who can remember everything you've done, or who wants to write that much documentation that nobody's going to read? Uh, so usually I think it's better if you just put yourself available and you just tell them, listen, if there's a problem in the next 2 months or something like that, just hit me up with an email and I'll help you out. And that's worked really well for every job that I've ever held.
yeah, and you never know what's going to happen. Again, with networking especially, I run into people who I met, years and years ago, and they will then offer me some work because they know who I am and they met me years ago, and I might have shoved them off at that point in time, but today it's like, oh, now they actually have something that they can offer me that actually, they can afford my services, so I'll take that on. Had I burned the bridge with them, X years back, they probably wouldn't have come to me anymore. So yeah, definitely some good advice there. Don't burn bridges if you're trying to sell your services. Um, I think overall, just try to be nice about anything. If someone's
Be a
asking you,
decent human being.
yeah, be a good human being. If someone's asking you questions and Carl and I know Jesse, we love to give off as much advice and share our knowledge as much as possible as developers. So I try my best to hold the conversation and try to explain things, right? And try to educate as much as I can the person who's asking me the questions. Obviously, it comes to a point where some of them don't care, and I get this a lot, where it's like, I don't know what a theme is. I don't care what a theme is. I just want you to fix this problem on my website. At that point, I'm not going to say I burn the bridge, but I definitely walk away because I've tried to educate them and try to get them to fix their own problem, or at least know what they should be looking for in someone else, and they just don't care. And ideally, I think they just want me to do it for free, which I'm never going to do. So yeah. Any last words for either selling and or buying developer services? Nope. All right, cool. Well, thank you guys for joining us. Been a good episode. I do want to. We'll have to talk about some of these things a little bit more in some other podcasts, but definitely some good suggestions brought up today. I'm probably gonna now edit my website and put a minimum price on above my contact form because I've never done that before, and I get a whole bunch of random requests. So maybe that'll help ease that down. And I'm also going to stop being an asshole. So that'll be.
Stop it.
Stop it. All right. I will. I'll talk to you guys later. Thanks for joining.